Hi, it's Chris Grimm. This is Deep Work Fast every Tuesday at this time, 3 p.m. Pacific time, or you can watch it anytime on YouTube. But I come and give you tools, ideas, concepts to help you be your best in all the roles that you play at home and at work: boss, coworker, parent, partner, you name it, all the roles that you play. I want you to do it really, really well. So today, and this week in our blog, I pivoted a little bit. So usually, I'm talking directly to you about being the best that you can be. And because I spend so much time, 28 years worth of coaching leaders and teams, I had been getting a lot of requests to talk about how you can very intentionally and purposefully prevent a group of people, whether it's your team or your family, and we'll talk about how it parallels, where it's different, where it's the same, but how you can prevent dysfunction, toxicity, low performance. And I'm pretty good at that because for 28 years, um, you know, oftentimes we get called the most for team work and interventions when things aren't going well. Most leaders and teams don't want to spend money on consultants and coaches and facilitators unless there's something wrong. There are some of you, and congratulations if you are one of them, that proactively invest in their team and do team building and teamwork before there are problems. Not very many. So today, I do want to talk about forget paying someone to help you. And thanks, Heather, Mission Control, put the blog in the chat so that you can see it. It's a short read, but let's dig in because I want to talk to you about what it means actually to be intentional um, while you're in everyday life with your team. So I am not talking about something that has to cost money or be outside of the ordinary time that you're spending. But I do want to talk about what healthy teams do together on a regular basis versus what unhealthy teams do or could be doing differently. So let's jump in. And I'm going to use the model that most of you have probably heard of. I think it's from 1964. Believe it or not, Dr. Tuckman, I think his name was Robert Tuckman, came up with something. And when I say it, it's probably going to ring a bell because most people don't like that it rhymes. Forming, storming, norming, performing. The name of that model is really the group dynamics model. And the idea behind it is that each of those things I just said, forming, storming, norming, and performing, is a phase in the team's life cycle. And so, first, I just want to say to you, I'm going to teach you about this in a new way. I don't want you to think about these phases as if it's linear, that one starts and then it ends, and then the other one starts and ends, because I actually don't experience with healthy or unhealthy teams that that's actually the way it works. And so I want to teach you to think about these things all the time. So if you don't grab the blog and you just want to write it down somewhere, you can just write it down: forming, storming, norming, performing. And I want to talk about what that means if the group is healthy, and why I mean, and I have said to you that it doesn't have a beginning and an end and then it's over. So let's start with forming, right? Most people tend to believe that a team is forming only in the beginning when they're getting to know each other. In the group dynamics model, what Tuckman told us, I hope this isn't boring to you because it's actually juicy to me. It's going to help you avoid or fix some real problems. Anyway, so forming is the beginning of a team's project. I want you to think about that. So anytime a group of people, whether we work together or not, start something new, you are forming. And if you have a team and one person wins the lotto and goes and sits on the beach and you replace that person and you have team member change, the team actually starts forming again. Now, most people don't think like that. They think forming only happens in the beginning when we don't know each other at all. And that's a missed opportunity. It's flawed thinking by the leader and the team members because we're missing the opportunity to rediscover and meet people where they are at this moment. And this is important because even though you might have worked with people for a really long time, because business is changing so fast now, oftentimes the context of our life and the context of business is actually allowing us to grow. Maybe we're learning from mistakes. There's Shasti coming to make a cameo appearance for you. So, informing, if we do it intentionally and it's on our radar all the time, we should be thinking about, creating structured, planned moments, maybe during a team meeting, for you to just say, hey, time out. A lot's changed. Let's reset. And let's take a few minutes to think about what's changed for everybody on our team. We may take that for granted if people aren't actually new. But if we're starting a new year, starting a new strategic plan, maybe we've just bought a company and we've integrated them in our business, and now we're going to be selling new products. Any of that is a change in context. And that change in context means there's an opportunity for us to get to know each other again. Now, forming is done well by healthy teams and groups when we do intentionally take the time to allow our people to safely, this is important. Many people ask me, what is psychological safety, or what does safety actually even mean? It means we're going to create a space either in our meetings or outside in a social engagement or a team activity where everyone feels like they can participate without any repercussions, without any wonkiness, without pressure, and without topics. Here's the important part, that naturally create conflict. So we need time sometimes to have fun. We need times to just small talk. We need times to just get together where there's no pressure of the topics that usually have pressure. I usually do that with teams, by the way. So whether a team is functioning well or not, oftentimes I suggest to a leader that you use assessment tools so that people can detach a little bit from having to talk about pressure filled deadlines and things, and just have a safe space to talk about themselves and what an assessment does, like DISC or Insights or Colors or Myers-Briggs. There's a ton of assessments out there. Some are free, by the way, that you can have your team take, and that gives them a shared experience where they can talk about themselves in a safe way. Because the assessment, whether it's on a piece of paper or online, is going to give them insights about themselves that they themselves created because it was a self-assessment. It's not a 360. It's not other people telling you about your style and how your style works. The assessment reflects back to the person, almost like a mirror, what we said about ourselves. That alone creates safety because now I can decide how much I want to disclose about myself to the other people. And I'm not going to get hard feedback. And again, we're not going to have a conflict over everything. So you've got to create some space for forming all the time, or at least a few times a year, so that your team can get away from those pressure-filled business discussions and decisions and just get to know each other, or get to know each other, or get to know each other in a deeper way. So that's forming. Now, the reason forming is important is because we have to trust each other, at least at a certain level. We have to trust their basic character. We want to have some level of safe trust in people's competence. What I mean by that is when we're working together, whether you know it or not, we're judging each other's competence all the time. And the more we have to depend on other people to get something done, the more their character and their competence matters, right? So if you can't rely on someone and they're always late, they never get you the attachments or the things that you need, they don't show up to meetings, all of those things, you're judging whether you know it or not, whether you talk about it or not, whether you like working with them. the more negatives that are in that relationship now, because I've judged that I really don't like what you're doing and maybe I don't think you're that good, right? That's what competence means. Oftentimes it's not even IQ, it's actually about, do I think you can actually do your job? And if your job and the outcome of your job matters to me, because we're on the same team and we have to do something together, and I don't actually have a lot of confidence in you, we have a problem. Now, in Pat Lencioni's model, The Five Dysfunctions of the Team, he talks about that. He talks about having a base level of trust before we have conflict with each other. And by the way, forming, storming, same thing. Storming means sooner or later, it is inevitable for people to disagree. We might just slightly disagree on data. We might disagree with the way our company's strategy is being executed. We might disagree or just have a difference in our pace. You may think something's urgent. I might not think that same thing is as urgent as you because I have other priorities that I think are more important because maybe they are to my job. Thank you, Shasti, for again a cameo. Important for you to understand that if we don't form well, we don't have baseline knowledge about who the people are, and we don't feel like we can trust them at a foundational level, like they're just going to answer my email and my voicemails and they're going to open my attachments and they're going to show up to our meetings, then when it's time to storm and we actually have to agree about something that matters, it's most likely going to be bumpy. This, my friends, is why teams and sometimes whole organizations are toxic, because that next phase, forming, storming, norming, starts to happen the second we have an experience with someone where we have to do something together. And if it falls short, if the other person shows up and they're not what we expected, they're not what we needed, they're not what we wanted it to be, maybe they're loud, maybe they get upset because I didn't let them proof the last version of the deck that I needed to send to the boss to make the deadline. And they never answered my email. So I did it anyway. Think about how many times those things happen, right? Now we're norming because the people involved, whether they know it or not, because we're judging each other all the time about whether we can trust your character and we can trust your competence. Well, if we have a disagreement and we don't like the way it ended, even if we say, fine, it's okay, not a big deal, and the person says, sorry, we walk away. And guess what? We norm now in a way that's going to be safer for us next time. That's what you're doing. Just note, it can be if you don't like the tone of someone's voice, if you don't like the way they wrote the email, or you could be fuming mad at the way they handled something. No matter what, on the inside, you are making notes. And your notes usually have new rules about, well, next time, ... Here's how I'm going to handle the situation. We do that consciously, but we really do it subconsciously because, believe it or not, that fight or flight response we have, that part of us that is scanning the environment for threats all the time, well, guess what? Storming, even if it's a little storm, but if it's a big storm, well, there's a lot there that could be threatening. And your version of that and my version of that are ours. So I don't get to tell you what's threatening or not. It's however you feel it in your nervous system and whatever rules and expectations you have about the situation. And when we haven't been explicit with each other, when we don't have agreements, we norm unintentionally, and that creates dysfunction. So teams that are low performing, teams that are dysfunctional, it means somewhere in their relationships with each other, either overtly or covertly, they have normed in a way that's not functioning well. It could be avoidance of each other. It could be that someone decides telling the truth on this team is too hard. So I'm going to withhold information, or I'm going to lie about information, or I'm going to tell the boss one thing and say something else in front of the team. I'm sure you have your own experience of this, and you probably have horror stories from jobs that you've had all the way down from your first job. It happens. And like I was saying, it happens in our families too. Families run on family systems models, of course. We don't have the work protocol and culture and the things. If you work for a big company, there's kind of its own system and culture in the way we interact with each other. So, of course, in our family dynamics, oftentimes we have really weird norms because our parents carry the norms from their family into our immediate family, right? We have kids and we bring rules and we bring all the thoughts and feelings about how things should work into our family. And then we just recreate some of the patterns, whether they were good and functional or dysfunctional. So families have it too. And the reason that, even though they're a little bit different, and in some cases they might be extremely different, I do want you to understand that at a basic level, forming, storming, norming is happening all the time. So again, if you want it to be high functioning and we want to get to the performing time, and I want to talk about that because all groups of people have some kind of performing. Performing in itself doesn't always mean we are performing well. It just means that whatever we're trying to do together, right, something's going to happen. We're going to produce a deliverable. We're going to produce work. We're going to make a product. We're going to launch a product. We're going to raise money for something, right? Every group that you interact with most likely has a purpose and an agreed upon understanding of what work we're doing together. And so forming, storming, norming, performing means we're doing something. So, if we want to perform well, if we want to be great, if we want to be high performing, what that means is that we have to form well. So we storm well. And what that means is that we can disagree and have conflict with the least amount of damage in our relationships so that we each norm. We have rules about and agreements about the way we're going to interact with each other, and that our norms are healthy norms, right? Norms that are transparent and authentic, and we have clear, open communication instead of drama, lying, withholding, avoidance, passive aggressiveness, right? All the things that happen when a situation is dysfunctional and toxic can be avoided. Healthy forming, healthy storming, storming that knows how to be clean and not leave damage so that we norm in a way that is predictable and functional. And this is the important part, because oftentimes the reason a boss, maybe you, would call me to work with you and your team is most likely your team's not getting its business outcomes, not hitting the numbers, not making deadlines. Maybe the team members are unable to collaborate with each other. And so they're always running to the boss to solve and mediate those problems. That's a norming problem, friends. It means your team doesn't have the right agreements in place and in practice on a regular basis so that the business outcomes can happen in a consistent and predictable way. Now, I don't mean to make it sound super boring, but in business and sometimes even in our family, we want things to be predictable. And what I mean by that is it doesn't have to be boring and like the same all the time, but you do want to be able to say, I want this to happen and know that it's going to happen. That's what I mean about predictability. So high performing teams can say one thing and then actually do it in a consistent, predictable way. Like I can actually tell people, we're going to do this. It's going to look like this. It's going to sound like this. It's going to happen on this day. And it actually happens, and it happens well. So my goal for you is to be able to have more of what I just described, right? Get what you want, have a team that functions well, the least amount of damage when you have to disagree, which life is going to create lots of opportunities for disagreement, I promise. We're moving fast. There's lots of data to consider in everybody's situation. Even if at home, you're going to buy a new car or a new house. Lots of stuff to hopefully discuss, debate, agree on, and move forward without damage, with norms that are functional, with the least amount of drama, the least amount of going around people or whatever, so that we get the results that we want. Okay, we reached our 20 minutes. So I hope all of you who asked me for some teaming tips that this is helpful to you. I think next week I'm going to double click into super dysfunctional, toxic things and what you can do without a facilitator to get that back on track, or at least move it in the right direction for you and your team members. So thank you for being with me. I always love being able to read in the chat, but also get feedback from anybody. So if there are topics that you want me to address in the future, let me know. With that, grab that blog and have a great day.